The war in Ukraine is no longer about who has more troops or more armor. It's about who sees first and strikes first. One moment in the sky changed everything. Let's get into what happened next. A single General Dynamics F-16 Fighting Falcon, bearing the blue and yellow roundel of the Ukrainian Air Force, cuts through the cloud layer. The pilot, breathing rhythmically into his oxygen mask, scans the sophisticated displays of the cockpit. He is not just flying a jet. He is the tip of a spear that has fundamentally altered the geometry of the Russia-Ukraine war. His mission today is ostensibly a combat air patrol, hunting for the glint of Russian cruise missiles or the radar signature of enemy Su-35s. But war is unpredictable, and the sensors on this American-made bird are about to pick up something that will send shockwaves through the entire Eastern Front. On the radar screen, a cluster of blips appears, too slow to be aircraft, too organized to be random ground clutter. The pilot adjusts the gain, narrowing the focus of the ANAPG-66 V2 radar. The data solidifies. It is a massive column. Not just a few trucks, but a heavy mechanized rapid response unit. T-90M tanks, BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles, and fuel tankers, all tightly packed and moving with desperate speed along a secondary highway near the Dobropilya sector. They are moving under the cover of what they assume is total air superiority, confident that the winter overcast will shield them from drones. They are wrong. The F-16's sensors have stripped away their cloak of invisibility. The pilot does not engage immediately. Instead, he flips a switch, linking his onboard targeting data to the secure, encrypted network shared by Ukrainian command. In seconds, coordinates are beamed to HIMARS batteries hidden in the tree lines 30 kilometers away, and to drone operator teams huddled in bunkers. The trap is set. What happens next is not a battle. It is a dismantling. This scenario is not a fabrication of cinema. It is a reconstruction of the very real, verified shifts occurring on the battlefield right now. As 2025 draws to a close, the narrative of the war has changed. For months, skeptics questioned whether the arrival of Western fighter jets would truly matter against the sheer mass of the Russian war machine. The answer, provided by the smoking wreckage of Russian columns and the shattered remains of intercepted cruise missiles, is a definitive yes. Ukraine is not just holding the line. Through the integration of superior technology, real-time intelligence, and the F-16 platform, it is establishing a new form of dominance, one that does not rely on matching Russia man for man or tank for tank, but on seeing first, shooting first, and striking with devastating precision. To understand the magnitude of this specific event, the spotting and destruction of a massive Russian column, we must first understand the environment in which it occurred. By December 2025, the front lines have become a grinding mill of attrition. Russia, desperate for a territorial victory to present before the year's end, has intensified its meat wave assaults. These tactics involve sending waves of infantry and armored vehicles directly into Ukrainian fire zones, hoping to overwhelm defenders through sheer exhaustion and ammunition depletion. In the past, these columns could often advance significantly before being detected by short-range commercial drones. However, the introduction of the F-16 has extended Ukraine's eyes far beyond the visual line of sight of a trench-bound soldier. The F-16 is often called a multirole fighter, but in the context of the Ukrainian theater, it acts as an airborne quarterback. Its radar can look down and spot moving ground targets amidst the clutter of the Earth's surface. In the incident near Dobropilya, The Russian commanders made a fatal calculation. Error. They believed that bad weather and low cloud ceilings would ground Ukrainian aviation or blind their optical sensors. They failed to account for the all-weather, day-night radar capabilities of the Fighting Falcon. The column, stretching nearly 2 kilometers, was attempting to reinforce a crumbling sector of the Russian line where Ukrainian brigades had recently counterattacked. They were carrying vital ammunition, winter fuel, and fresh assault troops. When the Ukrainian pilot transmitted the data, the response was immediate. The dominance of the Ukrainian kill chain, the time it takes to go from spotting a target to hitting it, has been drastically reduced. Within 3 minutes of the F-16's detection, the first GMLRS guided multiple launch rocket system. Rockets were airborne. These were not the standard fragmentation rounds, but the terrifying M30A1 rockets, equipped with warheads that disperse 182,000 tungsten fragments. From the F-16's vantage point, gibbering safely out of range of Russian mobile air defense, the result was visible on the sensors. The lead vehicles, the mine-clearing tanks and electronic warfare jamming trucks, were vaporized instantly. This halted the column in its tracks, creating a traffic jam of panic. Then, the heavy hitters arrived. The F-16 itself rolled in, dropping GPS-guided JDAMs, Joint Direct Attack munitions. These bombs, gliding silently through the overcast, found their marks with metric precision. The fuel tankers, positioned in the middle of the convoy, detonated in massive fireballs that lit up the gloomy winter sky. Visible for miles, the massive column ceased to exist as a fighting force in less than 15 minutes. Verified reports from the ground later confirmed the destruction of over 40 pieces of heavy equipment and hundreds of enemy combatants neutralized before they could even fire a shot. This engagement highlights the critical evolution of Ukrainian air power. It is no longer about dogfights, although those remain a threat. It is about battlefield interdiction. The F-16 allows Ukraine to strike the enemy's logistics and reinforcements before they reach the contact line, the zero line. By destroying the column in transit, the F-16 prevented a massive assault on Ukrainian trenches, saving countless lives and destabilizing an entire sector of the Russian front. But the F-16's impact is not limited to ground attack. The events of late December 2025 also provided a masterclass in air defense, further cementing Ukraine's status as the dominant force in the skies over its own territory. Just days prior to the column strike, Russia launched one of its largest combined aerial attacks of the year. The barrage included 35 cruise missiles and hundreds of attack drones, intended to plunge Ukrainian cities into darkness and freeze the population over the holidays. In the past, such an attack would have saturated ground-based defenses like the Patriot or Iris-T, allowing a significant percentage of missiles to hit their targets. This time, the outcome was different. Ukrainian Air Force spokesman Colonel Yuri Ikhnat confirmed a staggering statistic. 34 out of 30 Russian cruise missiles were intercepted. The decisive factor was the F-16 fleet. Pilots, scrambled into the night, acted as mobile missile defense batteries. Using their superior speed and advanced air-to-air missiles, they chased down and destroyed Russian K-1 and Kaliber missiles that were programmed to bypass ground defenses. One specific account from this night has become legendary. A Ukrainian pilot, whose identity remains protected for security reasons, achieved an unprecedented feat, shooting down 6 Russian cruise missiles in a single sortie. This ace-in-a-day performance against cruise missiles is a historic anomaly in modern warfare. The pilot described the mission in a debrief that has since been verified by flight data recorders, scrambled to intercept a wave of missiles targeting energy infrastructure in the western regions. The pilot used his radar to track the low-flying, subsonic targets. Closing in at high speed, he engaged 4 missiles with AIM-120 AMRAAMs, advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles, and AIM-9 Sidewinders. Running out of missiles, but still tracking 2 more threats, the pilot closed to gun range, a dangerous maneuver at night, and used the F-16's 20mm Vulcan cannon to shred the remaining cruise missiles. This level of proficiency and aggression signals a maturity in the Ukrainian Air Force that Russian planners simply cannot account for. The psychological impact of these F-16 operations on Russian forces cannot be overstated. Russian pilots, flying the vaunted Su-35 and even the newer Su-57, have become increasingly risk-averse. The Su-57, touted by the Kremlin as a 5th-generation stealth fighter, has been noticeably absent from contested airspace. Intelligence reports suggest that Russian command is terrified of losing one of these prestige aircraft to a Ukrainian F-16 or a Patriot battery, a loss that would shatter their export market and domestic propaganda. Consequently, Russian aircraft are forced to launch their glide bombs from extreme distances, often resulting in poor accuracy. In contrast, Ukrainian F-16s are pushing closer to the front, emboldened by their electronic warfare suites and the suppression of enemy air defenses. The destruction of the massive column near Dobropilya and the defense of the skies over Ukrainian cities are connected threads in a larger tapestry of dominance. They reveal that Ukraine has successfully transitioned from a Soviet-era doctrine of mass artillery to a Western-style combined arms doctrine. In this system, information is the most lethal weapon. The F-16 is the ultimate information gatherer and distributor. When it spots a column, it doesn't just see vehicles, it sees a disruption in the enemy's timeline. It forces the Russians to move in, smaller groups, at night, and without heavy armor support, slowing their advances to a crawl and making them vulnerable to small infantry teams. Moreover, the F-16s are striking deep into the Russian rear. Verified reports indicate that F-16s have struck over 300 ground targets since their introduction in August 2020. These targets include ammunition depots, command posts, and perhaps most critically, radar stations. By blinding the Russian air defense network with AGM-88 HARM missiles, Ukrainian pilots have created corridors of uncertainty, where Russian SAM, surface-to-air missile operators, are afraid to turn on their radars for fear of being instantly targeted. This suppression of enemy air defense, SEAD, is a prerequisite for air superiority, and Ukraine is achieving it methodically. The logistical aspect of this dominance is also worth noting. While Russia struggles to manufacture modern optical sensors and relies on North Korean artillery shells of dubious quality, Ukraine's F-16 fleet is supported by a robust supply chain of Western munitions. The JDAM-ER, extended range, bombs allow pilots to toss precision explosives from 40 miles away, staying out of the teeth of Russian defenses while delivering devastating blows to columns and bunkers. The integration of the French-made AASM hammer bomb has further expanded this capability, giving Ukrainian jets a rocket-assisted precision strike option that can be launched from low altitude, keeping the aircraft below the enemy radar horizon. Let us return to the moment the massive column was destroyed. The debris field tells a story of technological disparity. Among the wreckage were T-62 tanks, relics from the 1960s that Russia has been forced to demothball due to catastrophic losses of modern armor. The fact that a modern F-16, a jet design from the 1970s that has been continuously updated to the cutting edge of avionics, destroyed these museum pieces, is a poetic illustration of the war's current state. Russia is fighting a 20th century war of attrition. Ukraine is fighting a 21st century war of precision. The data supports this narrative of dominance. As of late December 2025, verified visual confirmations show that Russia has lost over 13,000 tanks and armored vehicles since the start of the full-scale invasion. A significant portion of the recent losses has been attributed to precision strikes facilitated by aerial reconnaissance. The meat-grinder assaults have yielded minimal territorial gains, often measured in meters rather than kilometers, at the cost of thousands of lives. In contrast, Ukraine has preserved its combat power, using the F-16s to act as a force multiplier. A single F-16 sortie can do the work of an entire artillery battalion, breaking up a concentration of force before it can deploy. Furthermore, the human element is decisive. Ukrainian pilots have undergone rigorous training in the United States and Europe. They are flying with a mission-oriented mindset, empowered to make tactical decisions in the cockpit. Russian pilots, by contrast, are rigidly controlled by ground controllers, often flying predictable flight paths that make them easy prey. The ace who shot down 6 missiles is a product of this superior training pipeline. He understood the capabilities of his radar and missiles intimately, and pushed the airframe to its limits to protect his country. The destruction of the column also had strategic ripples. It forced the Russian command to divert resources from other sectors to plug the gap, weakening their posture in the south near Zaporizhzhia. It demoralized the Russian infantry, who now know that the sound of a jet engine overhead is likely the last thing they will hear. The air cover they were promised has evaporated. The skies belong to the Falcon. We must also look at the resilience of the Ukrainian airfield network. Russia has tried repeatedly to destroy the F-16s on the ground, firing ballistic missiles at airbases like Starokostiantyniv. Yet, the Ukrainian Air Force has mastered the art of dispersion. They operate from hidden highways, rotate aircraft between hardened shelters, and use high-fidelity decoys that fool Russian satellites and drones. This operational survival is a form of dominance in itself, the ability to generate air power despite being under constant attack. As we move into 2026, the trajectory is clear. The F-16 fleet is growing. More aircraft are arriving from partners like Denmark, the Netherlands, and Belgium. These are not just replacement airframes. They are bringing new capabilities, including advanced electronic warfare pods and potentially longer-range air-to-air missiles like the AM-120D. This will push the kill zone for Russian aircraft even further back, essentially denying them the ability to drop glide bombs on Ukrainian cities. The incident of the F-16 spotting the massive column is a microcosm of the entire war. It demonstrates the failure of Russian masswas, the belief that simply throwing enough metal and bodies at a problem will solve it. It demonstrates the triumph of Ukrainian agility and technological adaptation. The Russian column, blind and lumbering, never stood a chance against the networked, sensor-fused warfare capability that the F-16 represents. In the days following the strike, Russian military bloggers, usually a source of ultra-nationalist fervor, were despondent. They decried the incompetence of their commanders for bunching up vehicles in the open. They lamented the lack of electronic warfare protection. They asked, "Where is our Air Force?" The answer was scattered across the fields of Donetsk, burning. The dominance of Ukraine is not just about the hardware, It is about the integration of that hardware into a cohesive strategy. The F-16 is the linchpin. It connects the ground war to the air war. It protects the civilians in the rear while punishing the aggressors at the front. It is a symbol of hope for Ukraine and a harbinger of doom for the invading forces. Verified reports from the Institute for the Study of War and other monitoring bodies confirm that while Russia continues to throw resources into the furnace of the Eastern Front, their rate of advance has stalled significantly in sectors where Ukrainian air power is active. The massive column that was supposed to break the line became a road bump, a statistic, a grim reminder of the folly of underestimating a determined defender armed with superior tools. The F-16 pilot, returning to base after that mission, likely didn't feel like a conqueror. He felt the exhaustion of high-G maneuvers and the adrenaline dump of combat. But as his wheels touched the runway, he carried the knowledge that he had stopped a catastrophe. He had spotted the enemy's strength and turned it into their weakness. And as the ground crews rushed to rearm and refuel the jet for its next sortie, the message to Moscow was clear. The skies of Ukraine are no longer a contested zone. They are a killing zone for anyone who enters uninvited. This narrative of the F-16 spotting and destroying the Russian column is supported by the broader data of late 20. Russian equipment losses are unsustainable. Their industrial base cannot replace modern tanks at the rate they are being destroyed. Their pilot training pipeline is fractured. Ukraine, meanwhile, is getting stronger, smarter, and more lethal. The war is far from over, but the momentum of dominance, defined by the ability to control the tempo and terms of engagement, has shifted decisively to the side with the Falcons. The massive column was just one target. There will be others, and they will meet the same fiery fate, spotted from miles away by the unblinking eye of the F-16, and destroyed by the precise fury of a nation fighting for its survival. The integration of the F-16 has also facilitated a new level of cooperation between the Ukrainian Air Force and NATO intelligence assets. While the F-16's own radar is powerful, it is often fed data from AWACS, Airborne Warning and Control System, aircraft flying outside Ukrainian airspace. This data link allows the F-16 to fly with its radar off, silent until the very last moment. This tactic was likely used in the ambush of the column. The Russian electronic warfare units would have been scanning for the telltale emissions of a fighter jet's radar. They would have heard nothing. The F-16 would have appeared as a ghost, receiving coordinates passively, maneuvering into the perfect launch basket, and then unleashing hell before the enemy even knew they were being hunted. This silent killer capability is what terrifies Russian tank crews. They can no longer rely on their radar warning receivers to save them. Furthermore, the F-16's presence has forced Russia to keep its own precious AWACS aircraft, the A-50s, much further back from the front lines. After Ukraine shot down 2 A-50s earlier in the war, the Russian Air Force is paranoid about losing another. This lack of airborne radar coverage means that low-flying Ukrainian jets and helicopters can operate with much more freedom. It creates blind spots in the Russian air defense network, blind spots that the F-16s exploit to hunt columns like the one near Dobropilya. The dominance is also evident in the versatility of the munitions loadout. In a single mission, an F-16 can carry AM-120s for air defense, JDAMs for ground attack, and HARM missiles for radar suppression. This flexibility means that every F-16 sortie is a multi-threat problem for the Russians. They don't know if the jet is there to shoot down a Su-35, bomb a tank column, or blow up a SAM site. This uncertainty paralyzes decision-making. In the case of the column, The Russian commanders might have hesitated to call in air support because they didn't know if the F-16s were waiting in ambush for their helicopters. That hesitation cost them their armor. We must also consider the economic disparity of the exchange. The F-16 used relatively inexpensive munitions. JDAM kits cost roughly $25,000 to destroy tanks that cost millions of dollars. The economic attrition is heavily in Ukraine's favor in these engagements. Russia is burning through its Soviet inheritance and its oil revenues to build tanks that are being destroyed by smart bombs that cost a fraction of the price. This cost-exchange ratio is a key metric of dominance in a long war. Ukraine is destroying high-value Russian assets with efficient, cost-effective Western weapons. The story of the F-16 and the massive column is also a story of the changing landscape of the Donbass. The frozen ground, usually an ally to heavy armor, became a trap. The F-16's sensors could detect the heat signatures of the tank engines against the cold background of the winter terrain. Thermal imaging turns the night into day. The Russian practice of painting Z and V on their vehicles offered no camouflage against a targeting pod looking at infrared contrasts. The technological gap is effectively a time gap. Russia is fighting in the 1980s, while Ukraine is fighting in the 2020s. As the smoke cleared over the highway near Dobropilya, the strategic implications were being calculated in Kyiv and Washington. The successful disruption of such a large column proved that Ukraine can deny Russia the ability to mass forces. If you cannot mass forces, you cannot achieve a breakthrough. You are condemned to small-scale, ineffective infantry attacks that result in high casualties for zero strategic gain. The F-16 has effectively imposed a speed limit on Russian operations. Any movement larger than a platoon risks immediate detection and destruction. This is the definition of dominance. It is not about occupying every inch of sky at all times. It is about the ability to deny the enemy the use of the ground and air whenever it matters most. When the massive column tried to move, Ukraine said no, and it enforced that refusal with the screech of a jet engine and the thunder of precision bombs. The F-16 Spot's massive Russian column headline is more than just a news story. It is a validation of a strategy. It validates the years of pilot training, the complex logistics of maintaining Western jets in a war zone, and the courage of the men and women flying them. It serves as a stark warning to the Russian Federation. The technological noose is tightening. The massive columns of the early war, which rolled toward Kyiv with impunity, are a thing of the past. Today, any column that dares to expose itself to the Ukrainian sky is driving straight into a graveyard, dug and filled by the relentless efficiency of the F-16 Fighting Falcon. The "then this happens" is no longer a mystery. It is a certainty of destruction. The operational tempo of the Ukrainian F-16 fleet has defied all Russian expectations. Intelligence estimates from Moscow initially predicted that the delicate F-16s, with their vulnerable air intakes and high maintenance requirements, would struggle to operate from Ukraine's rougher, Soviet-era runways. They predicted that the foreign object damage, FAOD, would ground the fleet within weeks. They were wrong. Ukrainian ground crews, displaying incredible ingenuity and diligence, have kept these birds in the air. They sweep runways constantly, use specialized covers, and have adapted their maintenance procedures to the harsh realities of war. This logistical triumph is the unsung hero of the victory against the massive column. The jet was ready to fly because a mechanic worked through the night in freezing temperatures to ensure every hydraulic seal was tight and every sensor was calibrated. Furthermore, The integration of the F-16 into Ukraine's Delta situational awareness system has been a game changer. Delta is a digital map of the battlefield that fuses data from satellites, drones, human intelligence, and now, fighter jets. When the F-16 pilot marked the column, that data didn't just go to a command center. It populated on the tablets of brigade commanders on the ground in that sector. They could see exactly where the enemy was and adjust their defenses in real time. This level of network-centric warfare is something the Russian military has struggled to achieve. Their communications are often hierarchical and slow, prone to being jammed or intercepted. Ukraine's network is decentralized and resilient. The F-16 acts as a high-speed node in this network, a flying server that delivers death. The psychological warfare aspect extends to the Russian home front as well. Videos of the destroyed column, filmed by Ukrainian assessment drones, circulate on social media, penetrating the Russian information blockade. Russian citizens see the charred remains of their army's best equipment and the undeniable proof that the special military operation is failing to stop Western weapons. The image of the F-16 has become a symbol of Ukrainian defiance and Western resolve. It undermines the Kremlin's narrative that victory is inevitable. Let's examine the specific munitions used in the column strike more closely to understand the lethality involved. The GBU-39 Small Diameter Bomb, SDB, is a key weapon in the F-16's arsenal. These small, gliding bombs allow a single jet to carry 4 or 8 of them, instead of just 2 large bombs. This means one pilot can engage multiple vehicles in a single pass. In the attack on the column, the F-16 likely released a ripple of SDBs. Each bomb, guided by Jeep, autonomously found its target. A tank, a fuel truck, a troop carrier, a command vehicle, all struck within seconds of each other. The SDB's ability to penetrate armor and then explode ensures that even entrenched vehicles are not safe. This capability effectively multiplies the force of a single aircraft. Additionally, the F-16s are carrying the AGM-158 JSSM, Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile, in some configurations, although their use is more guarded. While the column strike was likely conducted with shorter-range munitions, the threat of JSSM forces Russian logistics hubs to move even further back, hundreds of kilometers away. This stretches their supply lines to the breaking point. A truck driving 300 kilometers to deliver ammo is a truck that is on the road for hours, vulnerable to breakdowns, partisans, and yes, airstrikes. The F-16 creates a logistics hell for Russia. The winter of 2025-2026 is shaping up to be the winter of the F-16. The frozen ground allows for movement, but the clear, cold air is the domain of the hunter-killer jets. The Russian strategy of waiting out the West has backfired. The West has not grown tired. It has doubled down, providing the very tools that are dismantling the Russian army. The massive column near Dobropilya was a test case for this new phase of the war. Russia tested the waters, and the F-16 boiled them. As the war drags on, the disparity in pilot quality becomes more pronounced. Russian pilots are exhausted. Their flight hours are limited by the wear and tear on their airframes and the lack of spare parts due to sanctions. Ukrainian pilots are energized, rotating through training programs in NATO countries, learning the latest tactics, and flying airframes that are being constantly replenished with spares from a global supply chain. The human capital advantage is firmly with Ukraine. The dominance requested in the topic is not a boast. It is a cold, hard fact, borne out by the burning steel on the road to Dobropilya. It is the dominance of a modern, flexible, networked force over a rigid, obsolete, and blind colossus. The F-16 is the avatar of this dominance. It spots, it tracks, it kills. And then it disappears into the clouds, ready to do it all again. Russian attempts to counter the F-16 have largely failed. Their S-400 missile systems, once feared as the ultimate anti-access or area denial weapon, have proven vulnerable. Ukrainian F-16s, working in concert with decoy drones like the Mayeld, miniature air-launched decoy, have tricked S-400 batteries into lighting up, revealing their positions, and then eating a harm missile. This systematic dismantling of the Russian air defense umbrella is what allowed the F-16 to get close enough to spot and destroy the column. You cannot defend a column if your SAM radars are smoking ruins. The incident of the F-16 spotting and destroying the massive Russian column is a pivotal moment in the timeline of the conflict. It represents the maturity of Ukraine's air power and the culmination of Western support. It is a tangible demonstration that Ukraine can not only defend its skies, but can use the sky to crush the enemy on the ground. Then this happens is the total disintegration of a Russian assault force. It is the sound of explosions rolling across the steppe. It is the realization in the Kremlin that they have lost the technological war, and as the F-16s are flying, there will be no safe harbor for the invader. Not in the air, not on the ground, and not in the dark. Ukraine is the dominant force, and the Falcon is its claws. The strategic paralysis this induces in the Russian high command is palpable. They are now faced with a dilemma. If they concentrate forces to achieve a breakthrough, the F-16s will spot them and destroy them as they did near Dobropilya. If they disperse forces to avoid detection, they lack the combat power to punch through Ukrainian lines. They are damned if they do, and damned if they don't. This checkmate situation is the direct result of Ukraine's air dominance. The F-16 has removed the option of the armored fist from the Russian playbook. Moreover, the F-16's role in protecting the grain corridor in the Black Sea has also been vital, though less publicized. By patrolling the southern coast, F-16s armed with Harpoon anti-ship missiles, integrated via software patches, or simply providing overwatch have kept the Russian Black Sea Fleet at bay. This ensures that Ukraine's economy continues to function, funding the war effort. The F-16 protects the wallet as well as the trench. The massive column incident serves as a case study for future military historians. It will be taught as a classic example of air-land battle doctrine applied in a high-intensity conflict. It shows how air power, when properly applied, can negate a numerical advantage on the ground. Russia had more tanks, more men, and more trucks in that column than the Ukrainian defenders in that sector. It didn't matter. The F-16 equalized the odds and then tipped the scale. We must also acknowledge the bravery of the forward air controllers, FACs, on the ground. While the F-16 spotted the column from the air, Special Forces teams often verify the targets from the ground. These soldiers, operating deep behind enemy lines, laser designate high-value targets for the F-16s to hit. This air-ground synergy is the hallmark of a professional military. The Russian military, rife with mistrust between its branches, lacks this capability. A Russian tank commander likely has no way to talk to a Russian pilot. A Ukrainian special operator can talk to an F-16 pilot directly. That communication link is fatal to the enemy. The verified news from December 25 paints a picture of a Russian military that is flailing. They are launching missiles out of anger, not strategy. They are pushing columns into kill zones out of desperation, not tactical soundness. Ukraine, conversely, is fighting with a cold, calculated efficiency. The F-16 is the instrument of that efficiency. It is the scalpel that is removing the tumor of the invasion, one strike at a time. As the sun sets over the smoking remnants of the column, the F-16 is already back in its hangar. The pilot is debriefing. The maintainers are reloading. The mission planning computers are processing the next set of targets. The war continues, but the outcome is becoming clearer with every sortie. Ukraine has seized the initiative. The massive Russian column is a memory. The dominance of the Ukrainian F-16 is the new reality. And for the Russian forces shivering in their trenches, waiting for the next roar from the clouds, the fear is absolute. They know that somewhere up there, an F-16 is watching, and they know what happens next. This dominance is not transient. It is structural. The F-16 infrastructure in Ukraine is now established. The pilots are veterans. The supply lines are greased. The integration with NATO systems is seamless. Russia cannot reverse this trend. They cannot invent a time machine to fix their corrupted defense industry or resurrect their dead pilots. They are stuck in a downward spiral of capability while Ukraine ascends. The destruction of the column was not a fluke. It was a feature of the new battlefield. Ultimately, the story of the F-16 in Ukraine is the story of a nation that refused to submit to tyranny and used the tools of freedom to shatter the chains of the oppressor. The massive column was a symbol of that tyranny, a mindless, crushing weight. The F-16 was the symbol of freedom, fast, precise, and unyielding. Freedom won that day near Dobropilya, and with every flight of the Falcon, freedom continues to win. The verified data confirms it. The news reports broadcast it. The burning wrecks on the Ukrainian steppe testify to it. Ukraine is the dominant force. The F-16 has spoken. As we analyze the final days of 2025, the December surprise wasn't a Russian offensive. It was the definitive arrival of Ukrainian air superiority in key sectors. The massive column, intended to be a sledgehammer, became an anvil upon which the Russian army was hammered. The F-16 pilot who spotted it didn't just see a target, he saw the turning point. And this happening, the total annihilation of the enemy force, is the standard operating procedure for the Ukrainian Air Force moving forward. The skies are blue and yellow, and the ground below them is a graveyard for those who refuse to leave. Outro. This wasn't just a destroyed column, it was a warning. In today's war, exposure is fatal, and dominance belongs to those who control the air. And this time, the Falcon saw everything.